Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate. Bit of a schedule shift. We'll talk about that. We're mostly going to talk about Australian baseball right here on Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate. Let's roll the open in 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
And he is on the screen there. He is alive and well, I think, with a good-looking cap on this morning from WA. He's my broadcast partner, Paul Morgan. I'm Dan Vaughn. Welcome. I'm not in mid-season form, mate. Welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate. Good morning to you, mate. How you doing? Do you hear me? Let's try him again. Let's try him one more time. Let's bring him in. Let's try to get 3. Here we go. Now do you hear me? He's there. All right. He's there. I see him on the screen. Do you guys see him on the screen? Let me. There you go. Okay, you hear me now, mate. There you go. Good morning.
I do. I hear you now.
Okay.
I got you now. I thought the opener was running a little long. So
yeah, it's the world's longest open. Good morning to you, mate. How you doing? A bit of a scheduling. Well, it's like the ABL. We're doing a bit of a scheduling. The mystery show schedule. The fixture changes weekly. So does ours. So good morning to you. Glad you're here.
good morning, sir. Yes, it is the Sunday fry-up edition of Talking Baseball Australia. So excited about that, DB. It's beautiful. Just looking out the window, beautiful blue sky day, Chamber of Commerce day here in the West, and it was beautiful all throughout the week for baseball action here, of course. Yeah, an interesting time of the year. I love this time of the year, DV, because this is the time of the year where the ABL's just about to finish. The stove's getting real hot in MLB. So we're sort of at that cross-section where the stove's on fire in North America. The action's hot down here, and this is the funnest time of the year for a baseball fan, I think.
Sure is. We're baseball's best mate. We're glad you're along here on this Sunday morning in Australia, a Saturday night in North America. And first off, on the show, we don't got a lot, but we have a lot because we've notoriously had shows like this where our run sheet's pretty thin, but it turns out to be plenty of material. We've also had days we've got all this information and winds up getting tossed the wind. We don't expect that today, but what we are going to talk about a little bit, wrap the weekend up, especially from a Perth Heat Adelaide Giant perspective. Talk a little bit about today's games. The mystery schedule's been unveiled. We'll talk a bit about that. And then we're going to just get you set up for that and get you kind of rolling into your baseball week. Questions, comments. We want to hear from you. You guys got something to say? I want to hear from you. Fire them off. We got the chat going. We definitely will chat with you guys talking ABL. So let's go through the first thing I want to bring up, and is that you had a unique situation come up. First off, before we get to the standings, you had a chance last night to sit in the seat that I often wish I could sit in. I love the broadcast chair. I think it's the greatest chair in all of baseball, maybe besides being a catcher. But you got a chance to be a fan and sit with a couple of families together. And you watched the Heat and the Giants last night. Give me, as a fan, your impressions of what that show was like watching it there at Empire Ballpark.
Well, it's interesting. Of course, no broadcast of the Heat last night. The production crew that does the Heat was tied up with the AFL commitments for the AFLW and some soccer commitments and a few other things. So, unfortunately, just with the nature of the scheduled chop and changing, there was no broadcast. But nonetheless, I took my wife and 2 kiddos out to the game. Another family friends of ours came out to the game as well. And you know what, DV? One of the most fun things I had last night was my 7.5-year-old daughter, 5.5-year-old son. They had similar age kids with them as well, and we hunted foul balls for, I reckon, a strong 5 or 6 innings. And my daughter's friend from school, who's his first ever game, he kind of got the concept of keeping the foul balls, and he was on. And we run the outfield dash twice, and I just got to watch. Well, I didn't actually get to watch a lot of the game, but because I was chasing foul balls, but I got to see the game from the perspective of a kid again, and they had so much fun. They had so much fun running around, rolling down the hill, getting ice cream, getting themselves some chips, getting themselves some dancing on the dugout to, Hey Baby and whatever songs, and doing the YMCA and doing that stuff. And you sort of, I guess, DV, like, even though, like, as you and I, as baseball people, we'll always be probably critical about things that are maybe not executed as perfectly as what they could be, or there were times that I was like, I thought, well, the music's not loud enough, or maybe play a different song in this time, or maybe like this is an opportunity to bring in this song or that song, or bring in this organ beat, or bring in that, or the crowd's a little flat, so maybe do this. There was a lot of those note taking in my head happening, but like then for to watch 4 or 5 kiddos and 2 adults who've never been to a baseball game before, kind of just see the kids love it and enjoy it. Just sort of, it brought back about, I guess, what baseball's about in many ways. And it's so much of it is just about, the uniqueness of baseball, and the uniqueness of the foul balls and chasing the foul balls, and just kind of, dancing on the dugout and the innings breaks, and, the player, doing the outfield dash and having the ability to high five Kennelly, which my son was over the moon about, to do that twice, and, got to high five Fuller Proctor Fuller Proctor and Grant Witherspoon along the way, and Sasaki, and, and then, and also, when we went to the other side of the Heat bullpen, Mark Pettit, of course, great friend of the show, great bloke all around, who's up as the bullpen coach for the Heat this season. Like, we sat there and watched. We started to watch Gherkin warm up and started to watch. But you sometimes you just forget how much access at an ABL level you have to the teams, to the game, to the players. And it's like, you're standing right there watching a guy, and Gherkin's a great pitcher. You're watching him. My son's watching him warm up and get his pitches in, and like, get to sit behind there, and you can talk about a little bit about the game, and you've got guys like, and granted, I guess I get more access than most, but I've got Mark Pettit saying this is what he's going to do, and this is what he's trying to find, and this is the touch and feel, and it was just interesting. It was really interesting and it was just like, I guess when you're sitting up broadcasting the game, you forget how much access at an ABL level you have to players and to the game, and it's just so much fun. It's fun to be there, and it's fun to just be in and around it.
I'm going to add on to that too, and this is where you and I both agree. I know we do. And this is going to sound like there's Dan again being that guy. It's great we've had U.S. coverage, games on in the U.S. We've got this model now of building the coverage from outside back in. But I firmly believe, you firmly believe, and we've seen this, and maybe because we've been spoiled to see this up close in Perth, but your story right there is the recipe for the Australian Baseball League. I think it's the recipe for what is going to really make this thing become number 11 sport to maybe number 5. I'm not going to. There's no way in the world. It'd be great one day if baseball was number 1 in Australia, but I don't think it's hard. It's having a hard enough time being number 1 in North America. But I still see it can be a top 5 sport because the fan appeal at this level, the way that the kids can interact, these are things that you can't do in just about any other sport out there. I mean, yeah, you got a front row seat at the footy. You might be able to sit out and high fives, but most of the folks don't ever get access to the players in any sport. You just don't get that unless you're maybe a major corporate guy. You and I went to and loved one of the Perth Wildcat games. You and I had a fortunate experience a couple of years ago to be in a VIP situation to meet a coach and some players. But the average fan that goes to the Perth Wildcat games doesn't ever get a chance to interact with anyone on that court. It's just the way it's the nature of the game. And I really believe that the ABL has to bottle what you just did. And what we've talked about, you and I Talking Baseball Australia, and all of our ventures, we've talked about making it an event, making it a family-friendly event, and creating that festival atmosphere. The Heat do it. And I think you bottle that, what your experience is, your experience should be what every fan experience is, because that is the best advertising right there, what you just told us.
100%. And again, the family that we went with, the two kids that the same age as my two kids, they all go to school together. They'd never been to a baseball game before, but and that we all got there about the third inning of the first game of the double dip, and then it was hot. It was service of the sun, swelteringly hot at that ballpark. And the kids quickly wrapped. I sort of said to him, at the end of the fifth inning, you run the outfield and blah blah blah, and because it was a 7-inning game, of course, and you'll sing this song. Everyone will sing this "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" song. And the two adults that were there with us were like, "Oh, that's really cool." That's cool that everyone does that. And and my kids are big fans of Sonic, and they see Sonic Dougie there with his Sonic hat on, and they run the outfield once, and they're hooked. They are absolutely DV. The two kids who have never seen a game of baseball run the outfield. By the time they've gone from left field to right field, they are hooked. And then they're like my daughter's friend. He's on to his parents at the end of the game, saying that he got a foul ball. Him and my daughter were playing catch out on the third base side on the hill there. He's harasses his mum to buy him a glove today, to get him into t-ball. He wants to play baseball. He loves the look of it, and it's just you're spot on, DV. And I think I don't know, maybe there's so many people involved in baseball that are so close to the project that we don't maybe ever watch it through an 8-year-old's eyes. And then when you do, you kind of sit there and go, I've seen this ballpark so many times. I've seen God knows how many games there.
Yeah.
But it's like, it wasn't until really last night, and I'm sitting there with my son, who is 5.5, who loves baseball, and we're sitting there standing on the bullpen fence, watching the pitchers warm up. Guys come and saying hello to him, and that's not just, they're saying hello to every kid there. They're making catches. If a third baseman, first baseman, left field, the right field is making a catch, they're throwing the ball into the crowd. And you just sit there and go, geez, you are spot on what you said before. This experience does not happen in any sport, period. There is no sport that interacts players and games like an ABL game. And, it doesn't happen at the big league level. I'm assuming it probably happens at the American Association. It possibly happens at some stadiums in the association.
There are things you do, right? Yeah. Because you're right. There are things you do at the American Association level, like when you, for example, players, people come in the gate, you got 2 or 3 players signing autographs, you have autograph. Now, granted, in a COVID world, well, that's not going on, but in a non-COVID world, it's very fan interaction. I think I've told you this story, and for the Australian fans, if you have a chance to come to Kansas City and watch, for example, the Kansas City Monarchs, we'd love to have you. And let me tell you what makes it so cool for the kids there. Now, it's just like when Perth, the game is over, the fans come out, they chat with the players, they're getting photos, they're all mingling about in the field as if, it's just like everybody's kicking it and talking. We've done our media availability down there many times. We've interviewed players when they're signing autographs to little kiddos. In KC, the clubhouse is located in right field, so the players have to walk from the field all the way out toward right, up the grassy embankment to the clubhouse, and the kiddos are lining the grassy embankment stairs, and they're all around the clubhouse. The kids can literally walk with the players into the clubhouse door, and then, of course, players go in. But it's a place to mingle, and there's access far beyond in the American Association than you have the big leagues, and the ABL is just like that. And it's not. We've been to all the ballparks. Brisbane the same way. I mean, for example, Brisbane, they do the same thing. People mingle out in the field. We've talked about on Canberra, so fan friendly. These are experiences that can happen everywhere. It's not just in Perth, but this should be the model. And if they're not doing it, there's got to be some way to harness this energy, and that should be the selling point. Again, I'm not against building this thing from backwards in. That's kind of the motto with the league media, is bring it in from that foreign, and that's all fine and dandy. But if you got to grow this thing on your soil, those kiddos have got to do it.
And I agree with it. And my knock and criticism of those hub games were, and I said it to you. I mean, I was at work. I mean, 99% of people were at work. I mean, granted, the kids were on school holidays, I guess, so they could watch it. But I'm with you. I think you need to grow it. And the best way to grow it in North America is eventually down the track to have that American Association Australian team playing in America, who'll naturally grab attentions of, if and let's just say that the Fort Worth Wombats or Fort Worth Kangaroos, for want of a better word. I mean, if Fort Worth are going to play, and they're in the American Association, and let's say they're going to go from Fort Worth to play the Kansas City Monarchs, there's no way that the Kansas City paper is probably not running a story about some bizarre Australian baseball team in town to take on their Monarchs, or in Sioux City or in Winnipeg and wherever. I mean, that's and I'm but you've got to have that local engagement, that local buy-in. And I just felt like as a fan last night, and watching it and having my kids there and watching and playing and buggering around with the kids, it was good. So see if there's any chance of expansion out west, so it doesn't have to fly across country for every road trip. Look, I think Perth is probably. I mean, I think you could easily have a two-team town in Perth. Whether that's a version down the line, DV, of Geelong Korea, we know has worked well. Whether it's a Japanese team, whether it's a Korean team, whether it's a local team, I don't know. But I think the more baseball you have, and that's the thing. And you said it in the game notes that you provide, DV. The Heat fans show up more than any other fans in this league by a fair stretch too. It's not really. I mean, I can't recall.
I'll pull that up for you. Go ahead. I'm listening to you. Go ahead. I'm going to pull it up.
But I mean, it's the ballpark's not in. And the thing in Perth, the ballpark is not in an ideal location by any stretch of the imagination. And I think, there has been many conversations around doing even a one-off game in Leederville, a one-off series in the city, somewhere like that, maybe to drag some fans in, because the ballpark isn't located necessarily central to everyone, but fans turn up, DV.
Yeah, and Steve, I'll echo what Paul says. I think going forward, once we get past this rough year, and when we gotta get some sort of our feet under us a bit, expansion is on the horizon for the league. Now, we know that. We've talked about that. We're privy to that information. We do know this. Where that will be, how that will look, what cities it can be. I think you're seeing maybe a little kick of the tires at Lismore the last week with those games there. Obviously Tasmania's come up, the Gold Coast, Northern Territory, all kinds of possibilities around. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. And I think I think on that list of possibilities would be a second team in a number of markets. And one of them would be Western Australia. I mean, makes sense. Now, from a scheduling standpoint, I think it makes sense. How that would work, I don't know. But obviously, it's you look at the footy. It's obviously been a good thing for footy. But yes, I think that it's a possibility. I don't know, Steve, though, if it's the number one priority right now. I would think I would think if you were going to rank the possibilities, let's just say, for example, and this is not true, let's just say Tasmania was the leader of the clubhouse for expansion. Well, and there was 5 more more places behind them. I would say the second team in the West would probably be 5 or 6, 7 down the list. But it's not off of the question. I think anybody that can see that it's successful. Let me pull that number for you too, real quickly. By the way, I appreciate the kind words. Feeling better. For you folks that don't know this, I did test positive. My wife tested positive. My youngest daughter tested positive here in the States. My wife is still scuffling here on Saturday night. I did a Regeneron infusion 48 hours ago, actually, right now, and I have marked improvement. I actually went and did my 53-minute walk today, up from 30 minutes yesterday, and outside of my stuffiness to a degree and just basic allergy feeling, I'm very blessed to feel much better, and I'm on the mend. My wife, though, can still use your thoughts and prayers worldwide. So, but thank you for asking. I appreciate it. That number 2, by the way, let me give you guys this tidbit. This is a did you know? I don't have the music cued for you. But let me give it to you. I wasn't going to play that today, but over the years, this going back since the relaunch of the ABL, this is coming from the game notes, and I actually crunched these numbers so I can tell you these are the right numbers. This is going into 2020-21, so this doesn't include this year, but with the Heat leading the league in attendance, not even close, this is what you got. Now, granted, an asterisk by the year because there's been so many delays and changes and all that. Over the years, the Heat have finished first or second in both home attendance and home average attendance in 8 of the last 10 seasons. So they've finished first or second in 8 of the last 10 seasons. In 15-16, the team finished third in total attendance and third in average. And in year one, the first year of the league, the club also finished third. They've never finished below third. And here's the thing. Going into this season, Heat fans have shown up to the tune of 251,379 through the turnstiles over the years. The next closest club is Canberra. They're at 210,758. So they are what my math tells me 41,000 behind in change behind the Heat over the years. Now, granted, the Heat do not own the largest postseason crowd or big crowd. If you go back through all the crowds, they're the only franchise that draw over 30,000 in a season. And then since the league's gone back fewer games, they're the only club that's hit that mark. It's pretty impressive, and it's not even close. I mean, you look at the big crowds, and this is not poo-pooing anybody else in the league. It's just a fact. That's a hot market for baseball in the West. So that did come with the game notes.
Yeah. And I think one of the things was the Thursday night crowd, like everyone goes, boy, disappointing crowd, really low crowd. And it was for a standard, but it's still 1,100. And then you look at box scores, and there ain't too many 1,100 crowds, you know. And then you look at those hubs. I mean, you and I nearly fell off our chairs some days when those hubs had attendance of 50.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt. That's the thing. I mean, and again, yeah. Phil, good morning to you too, mate. We were going to get that. By the way, we jump right into that too. Here's your standings quickly on the screen there, and I don't know if you guys can make those out, but this is what was going on this morning. Of course, with Perth and Adelaide both on the ice for the weekend, 3 games back. And you've got the mystery round has been announced as well. But you got a busy day of baseball right now. You got a very big series. Pretty much a do or die for Sydney. They've got to win a pair of games. Yep. They've got to win a pair of games. They sit at 2-6 going into the play right now. Brisbane at 6-15. They're 9 back, and then Canberra 9-10. It looks like at the moment your top 4 are pretty much set for the most part, but you've got some shuffling in the back end. And I guess this is what takes me to the mystery round, partner. This mystery round means a lot, especially if some things happen today for a couple of teams that can mean a lot more next week.
Well, yeah, you're right. And I think it's such an interesting series because then the postseasons we talked about broke it down a little bit more in last week's show around the, a lot of the one and done show and go games, which is interesting. And actually, I'll come back to Adelaide on that point. But yeah, you look like Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide should go through. I would think one win. Canberra gets one of the wins today. They're through, and boy, Brisbane might get through with a 286 winning percentage, which is a long way back. But they're going to be in with a shot, DV.
Yeah, and I guess my question too is, because basically the way I look at it, Sydney with this new announcement would have to win both games today and all 4 next weekend for them to have a chance to be that club to make that postseason. I mean, what do you do? I mean, if you're a Blue Sox fan, you just put your hands up and say, chalk it up to COVID, because I don't really know what do we know about that club? I mean, what do we know really about any club, really? We're starting to see the warts of certain clubs now, but I mean, it's almost unfortunate that, another series here and there, it might be a different story. So I don't know what the mystery round does them much good except for at the gate.
No, and and look, no club's been hit harder. Like, let's be honest, no club's been hit harder this year than the Sydney Blue Sox, who have had such a They came into the season the most optimistic of all clubs, DV, with Manny Ramirez, and things were going to be all right, and things were looking okay. But no one's plan has gone less to plan than the Blue Sox with
No,
the outbreak
no.
and the cancelled games, and and now I think like the best thing that can happen in this mystery rounds, they go back to Blacktown. They hopefully get a couple of wins. Look, I don't think they make the postseason, but if they do, all well and good. But their
Yeah, well,
season's been a
yeah,
mess. Like, let's be
yeah,
honest,
it's
their
been a
season
mess.
has been a total mess. And I feel
Yeah,
for
it's been
Adam
a mess.
and the team at Sydney, because
I do.
it's. But they got something,
Yeah,
and you spoke about it just a little bit earlier in the show. They got that road trip up to Lismore, good facility up at Lismore, and perhaps that gets into the mix. We talked about expansion. Obviously, Lismore is very much on the radar for expansion, but maybe in the interim, that the Blue Sox going up there, it's an opportunity for them to to put a show on the road once a year at least, DV, and just kind of get engaged a bit more with that
yeah.
New South Wales community.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, Sydney leads in that fifth inning 2-1, as Phil was just pointing out in game one. They've got game two to follow. And then also today, Melbourne and Brisbane. Just looking at all that, I mean, really, I mean, there is some shuffling at the bottom. Brisbane could move within, if Canberra was to drop both and Brisbane wins one, they would pull within three of the loss columns for the week. There is a mathematical chance to move into that fourth position. Um, I guess the question for us next weekend, as we get to that mystery round coming up next weekend, and the way it's going to work is that you were right on with it. Now, you guys can't see this, I don't believe. It's too small on the screen. I'm sorry about that, gang. Let me pull this up on my screen so I can see it a little better. But what we do know is that Brisbane and Canberra at Newmarket next weekend on Thursday. Sydney will be hosting Adelaide as well. That's Thursday night. Then Friday, as Paul mentioned earlier, Perth and Melbourne there at the ballpark in the West. And then it's those other two clubs continue their series. For the Heat, it's a doubleheader on Saturday and then the single game on Sunday. And it'll be, again, a 4-game series for everybody. So Brisbane and Canberra, Sydney and Adelaide, and Melbourne and Perth. For me, I guess the question is, because I think you've mentioned to me, on a 1 game and off, it's a hard bet on Adelaide,
100%.
Perth, or Melbourne. They all those three clubs. I mean, that's a tough one to put money down on, because I mean, in the right scenario, uh, one of those clubs can easily roll in a 1 or 2 game thing. I mean, that's why I think it's very important that being 1 or 2 is huge. So there's a lot to play for there. The Heat do have that little advantage, but they're also playing Melbourne, and Melbourne's pretty much got to win 1 game to claim the top spot.
But you know what I found interesting? This is especially with Adelaide, and I take my hat off to Chris Adamson, and I think that during this series as well, I think Adelaide may or may not, like Adelaide were absolutely taxed. Their pen was taxed. They didn't have enough arms, and that was evident probably in the series before, where they got blown out in that double header, and they were a lot better pitching this week. But I think that they made a conscious decision, especially on that Friday night game, to go, okay, we are going to do a 1-game strategy, which was when Tyler Birch came out, pitched a couple of innings, gave up those 2 solo shots. Luke Wilkins came out, retired 9 batters in a row with 3 with 3. It was 9 up, 9 down for Luke Wilkins. He was untouchable. It went into Austin Ross to Hennigan to Lott to Van Stencil to close the door. I think, for me, I think Adelaide got that strategy right, and I actually think they're a really difficult team to beat in a 1-game scenario. The Heat have plenty of pitching. They can't score runs. Their offense is relatively inconsistent right now. But Adelaide, to me, showed what they would likely do in a 1-game scenario. And I got to tell you that they look pretty good. And the Heat probably did the same thing when they brought out Saupold halfway through the game. It went from Salsa into Saupold, which we thought with who was slated for the start, I think Saturday night. But I think this week, this round of strategies that probably needs to happen this week, and I think you'll see it very much with Melbourne and Perth, and also Adelaide get the opportunity to get Sydney, is How are we going to win a one-game series? What's our best foot forward? For Adelaide, it might be Neuenborn into Birch, into Wilkins, into Van Stensel. That might be sort of their punch. For the Heat, maybe it is, Unsworth for 4. But secondly, how do we generate runs? Because poor Dylan Unsworth. I mean, let's be fair to Dylan Unsworth. He should have his record. I mean, he has had 0 run support this year.
As a matter of fact, let me give you this number from Unsworth. This coming from our Talking Baseball Australia game notes. This is very interesting too. It's not a sabermetric number, so it's not going to probably raise your eyebrow too much. But it's interesting when Unsworth has started this year. The Heat are 1-4, yet he has one of the top earned run averages and the lowest WHIP in the league. I mean, the guy has been as good of a pitcher as there is out there in this league. Yet, but the Heat are 1-4 when Unsworth goes. Flip the script a little. Well, not a flip the script, but you got a guy like Sulzer is 5-0 when the team starts. He's not 5-0. The team's 5-0. I find that very interesting, and I think still, if you're Andy Kyle and you're a Heat fan, you're down there going, you know what, Unsworth has had some bad luck. The worm's due to turn. If you keep throwing strikes like you're doing and keep working ahead in the count and here's another thing, the Heat just don't walk anybody. They don't walk anybody at all. Now, granted, they have trouble fielding the ball. They lead the league in errors, but they're also committing the fewest walks. And if they were doing both those things, that'd be trouble. But there's not a lot of folks, extra runners in the base paths, because they don't walk anybody. It doesn't matter if it's the rookies or the veterans. No one walks anyone. And that's a huge plus, too. And you got to be figuring, hey, and that's why this is my argument for the Heat getting a one-off 2-game winning streak to win it all. You got to think that Unsworth, even though he's thrown well, the results are going to look different at some point. The worm is eventually going to turn, is what I'm thinking. But then again, I think you can probably say that about anybody. There's hard luck everywhere. As I look, too, I'm looking kind of at those ERA leaders, too, that have been updated in the last half hour or so out of New York. I mean, look at Melbourne. What Melbourne's throwing out there with Flynn and let's see here. Just looking at their staff and Gunnar Kynes. I mean, that his numbers are. He's a guy that's got high numbers, but it's due to see better things ahead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying. So I think every team has an argument here that but in Unsworth's case, gosh, I mean, the guy should be easily before 4-0. Are you concerned? You look at these clubs. You mentioned Adelaide, and I'm going to give you Adelaide's my concern. Are they? I mean, first off, you faced a team 8 straight days, 12 out of 10 ball games have been against each other. You get to know each other. You start knowing your tendencies. I'm not shocked that Neuenborn had a bit of a rough outing after having such good outings. I'm not shocked that they eventually solved Gherkin or they've had some, Reiniger's had some troubles or whatever. So now they're going to see a new team. That I think we'll get a much better gauge of where both Melbourne is and where Perth is. But my concern is for Adelaide is, you mentioned earlier, are they just so taxed that pitching staff just doesn't have innings left, any gas in those innings?
No, I think, and I think, and this is to Phil Herden's point in the comments before around don't write off the Blue Sox yet. I think they can win quite a few ball games against Adelaide, Sydney, just based off the fact that, I'm not sure that Adelaide's pen is thin, and I was talking to, but Nathan Davison was there as well. They flew in Brebner Ross. He's a position player, but he got flown in from Adelaide, so he arrived on Friday. Goes straight out to the field to pitch, and they are thin. And I'm still there was Beggs as well. Dustin Beggs didn't see any action. Was slated to pitch the first game, so he has an oblique strain, which is questionable whether he comes back. And I think they're one again. When they're really good, Adelaide. I think it's when they sort of got forced to go deep, and if they got in trouble early, that's when they're going to be in trouble. I thought that was the best I've seen Todd Van Stensel pitch in years. I thought he was lights out as a closer for the Adelaide Giants, so that's a massive tick from there. Now Wilkins was a case of two Luke Wilkins. he's been in trouble twice on the Heat and got sort of beaten up twice against the Heat. Then he looked phenomenal the other night when he was 9 up, 9 down. But if I was an Adelaide Giants fan, I do love the Adelaide Giants, but I feel that they're a little thin. And you said it as well, DV. I think when the Heat, presumably they'll play so vice versa. The Heat, Melbourne, Adelaide probably played each other a bit, and they figured each other out. Like I think the Heat figured out Mitch Newborn in the last game. He was lights out, and I think they made the adjustments in the first game yesterday, as did Adelaide last night with Will Sheriff, who was rolling right along. But that would be my only concern from Adelaide. I think their offense is fine. I think their arms are questionable if they get in trouble early.
Yeah, you mentioned Van Stencil, by the way, 25 saves so far, or 25th save 2 nights ago, or actually 26 last night. Yeah, because he had save in game 2. He's now just 1 behind Matt Williams for 3rd all time. Of course, Ryan Searle, who's still going strong, that legend, with 45 leads the league. But and this is a show we could probably have with Todd. I'd love to get him on, and he and I we messaged back and forth. We're going to get him on at some point, maybe in the season's over with, because I think this is a guy, and we're talking about also Drew Anderson. You're right on there, Ethan. Todd Van Stencil's a guy that every level has produced. It didn't matter if he's been at affiliate ball, independent ball, ABL ball. The guy has produced. And I mean, he's not. You look at his numbers; he hasn't cratered. It baffles me to this day, and he's not. He doesn't come off as a bitter guy about it. But if I was him, I'd be pretty ticked off because he's been so close to the cusp of making the big leagues, and yet his numbers are so consistent, and he's just been doing it for so long. And I don't care about age. I mean, age is not an issue. The guy can throw strikes and get outs. And I've watched him in person in the association and the ABL. We've been watching this guy for years, and it's a mystery to me why he's not in affiliated ball at a high level, if not the big leagues. I think that guy's got something, and he's done it at every level. It baffles. That's probably a show for another day, but I just had to throw it out there.
What was interesting though, so Todd Van Stencil got the save Monday night, and one of the strikeouts, and he was hitting consistently 97 to 99 on the gun, like consistently. His fastball was hitting there. His off speed was hitting about 80, 88, 87, 88. But he struck out, I think he struck out Alex Hall from memory. 99 on the gun, just blew right by Hall. And anyway, that sort of snippet of that strikeout, and I think the strikeout happened. I think mine was like Van Stencil strikes out 99 on the gun. Back, and I must have got tagged in it somewhere on Twitter or whatever. But the amount of messages I got, and people supporting Todd, and like people like wishing him well, and even current big leaguers and former big leaguers and all this. But for me, DV, I mean, I'm sitting there going, this guy is, in my opinion, anyway, your premier closer in Australian baseball at the moment, and he looked, as I said. And I was a little surprised that in the first series, we didn't see him in the first 3 games, didn't see him until that Monday night when they had the save opportunity. But to me, if Adelaide are in any of these championship games, these one-off games, and they have the lead going into the ninth, I don't see him blowing a save. I mean, I just don't at the moment. I just don't see him doing it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. He's a really phenomenal young man, and you're right on there. Last night, the Heat, and we've said this, they could very easily have won this series already, but they won the season series Adelaide. Are you concerned? And everybody's got some warts. I mean, I think the Heat starting pitching head to head with Melbourne and with Adelaide is ahead. I mean, you look at the numbers, the starters, the starting rotation. I mean, Unsworth's been some up and down, but even with what the aces are all out there, Flynn is their top guy numbers wise. Beardsley and as I mentioned a moment ago, and Kynes, both numbers a little high, but you're rolling on Unsworth and Sulser and Wiles. Those are all been pretty solid. Are you concerned about maybe the bullpen just got too many arms? Because for whatever reason, that pen has had some real issues. Only 2 saves the staff. and they've had a little trouble in that. It's not just one. It's kind of a club wide deal. Is it because they got so many arms?
Yeah, I think so, DV, and I think they've all got good. I think these starters are getting quality starts. They may be calling the pen at a different time, but we saw last night again. Sheriff come on, and for the first time he got knocked around a bit, and then sort of Gherkin came in, and we hadn't seen a lot of Nate Gherkin, and maybe the fact that he hasn't had a lot of time out there sort of just meant he took a little longer to adjust, and like it was a bit of a bigger crowd last night. I'm not saying it was an enormous crowd, but 2,000 change in Perth, and he just didn't seem as comfortable on the mound. So I don't know whether it's that they're not getting enough work in. I don't know whether it's just but I'm with you. I think you get these starts, you sort of either your offense explodes or is pedestrian at best, and then you sort of it gets a little the door's not necessarily closed. And this is kind of what I meant. Before with Todd Van Stencil, I feel like he's closing the door, and maybe that, at the Heat, is there a guy at the moment that's lights out in the pen late in the game? Like no one springs to mind, but at the same time, I think their starting pitching is so good that they're just not. And this goes back to my concern with the Heat, and I think they're good enough to win the championship this year, but my concern is their offense becomes a little same quite quickly. And we talked about it a couple of times on the broadcast. They've got a lot of guys with speed on base, but Sasaki's one, Bajaski's one, Williams is one. And I've said it time and time again, and it's an unpopular opinion, I know, but like lay a bunt down. Like get someone to do something different. That game on Monday night, I think when there was 34 strikeouts was ridiculous. There was three players. There was Sasaki and two Adelaide Giants and Shane Sasaki all got golden sombreros, and there's just guys swinging freely, swinging and missing, swinging and missing, swinging and missing, swinging and missing. And to me, and the Heat, if you're an opposition player playing the Heat, there's they lead the league in errors. And I've said it, I don't know how many times I want to say it, DV, but just put the ball in play, see what happens. So.
Yeah, Ethan brings up fielding seems to be a problem. It is a problem, but again, I've not really talked about the defense. I do these game notes. There's no stat about this club I haven't seen every day. It's a daily thing for me. And so I've watched these defensive numbers go up, but I've also watched those walks not be issued. So the key, here's the thing, and it's all statistics. The idea is to curb as much of the damage as possible. I think I've told you guys this before. Former pitching coach of the Reds, time in the big leagues, Derek Botello, in my first couple of years as a broadcaster, taught me this and told me, you're going to fail as a pitcher. You're gonna eventually give up the grand slam or the solo shot or whatever. The idea is to minimize the damage and to dodge that damage, to keep the damage to a minimum. In other words, it's okay, giving up a solo home run, tip your cap. But when you walk the bases loaded, then you get up to a strike, and then you give a grand slam home run up, that's when things start snowballing. So when you allow when an error gets aboard and you hit a home run behind it, that hurts. If you get an error behind it and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, the guy's aboard, I got to throw strikes, and then you walk them, and now you got first and second, and then the thing unravels. What's happened for the Heat, they've kept the damage to a minimum because they don't walk anybody. So yeah, the errors are hurting because they did hurt. The error in game 2 last night hurt. That cost them an unearned run, and it hurt in the end. That was a game winner. But at the same time, the fact they're not loading the bases and they're not walking folks like every other club is doing it. The Heaters not doing it. So that you're not putting yourself in as big of a jam. Now your defense does let you down, but if your defense is letting you down, but your pitching's not, and your offense is getting a bye, you have a real good chance. And that's the thing. You're limiting the damage, and that's what's been saving grace. The defense, you need to shore that up. But if you're going to have defensive problems, you better not be walking folks, and they're not walking anybody. So you get a solo home run or 2-run home run away, you tip your cap. The offensive side of things, this is where my Melbourne versus Perth thing is interesting. Those two teams are not the same. In recent years, they were very similar ball clubs, strong pitching, strong bullpens, a lot of pop. This year, the Aces are definitely the team with the pop. Extra base hits, home runs, the long balls, their calling card. The Heat, if they're hitting long balls, which you want to hit them, if they're hitting long balls, that's probably not good for business. As a matter of fact, let me pull this number up for you. We're talking about numbers here. And by the way, we're glad you're here on Baseball's Best Mate, Talking Baseball Australia Live. This is the number from the Talking Baseball Australia game notes, and this is interesting. You figure, uh, that when you hit home runs, you're going to be successful, right? Pretty much. When the Heat have only hit 2 or more home runs in 3 ball games, and you figured those 3 ball games they'd be undefeated with only 2-1. When the Heat have hit 1 home run, they're 5-2. Still pretty good. And when the Heat have hit no home runs, they're 4-5. So what I'm trying to tell you is it's no guarantee. Now here's the flip of the coin. Now, when the Heat don't allow a home run, they're 6-3. But here is the interesting number: when they've allowed a home run, this is where I go back to the whole keeping folks off base. When they've allowed a home run, they're 4-4. And just because you give up home runs doesn't mean you lose. So that's what these home run numbers can be so confusing. I really don't believe that this club's hitting long balls, that's the way they're going to win. They're going to win, like you said, getting a board, stealing bases, hit and run, doubles, letting the butt down, and putting pressure on the defense with your speed and your gap power, which they have. I mean, Robbie Glendenning and Grant Witherspoon are the great carbon copies of ball players back to back in the lineup card. And if you get folks aboard on them, that's how they win ball games. It's called moving the card, churning the card.
Yep.
Let's see here.
We got moving.
Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, there we go. See Nate's family right there. Pete sorely missed as well. Yeah, again, it does miss. I will tell you this: Andy Kyle is not one of those guys that he's real meticulous. He's a real studier. And what I've noticed the last couple of weeks, he's actually flipped the card. A lot of guys just won't flip their lineup card. They will leave their lineup card set. Now, granted, and you look at the lineup card, Tim Kennelly's going to lead off this ball club, period, in a story. But he's tinkered here and there to combinations in 2, 3, 4, and he's not afraid to do that. And I think he sees when a guy gets hot, he'll put Robbie in that 2 or 3 spot. He's done that. He's flipped guys with Witherspoon and Robbie as well. He moved Ramirez up to 5. He's going to do those. So these are little notes I've got written down there. So anyway, sorry, partner, I kind of jumped your gun there, but your thought going forward. Go ahead.
No, you
go
go. No, you give me your
thought.
Thought going forward.
Yeah, going forward. This weekend, now granted, it's a little early because we got, Melbourne's got to play today, and we're going to have a little time to digest this thing. But is that series delicious next week or what?
Oh, unbelievable. I think especially probably the Friday night game, that first game, and the double headers. I guess we don't know what's going to happen there, but yeah, I think at some point both these teams probably, and maybe it's game 1 and game 4 they do it, but I think at some point these two teams go, let's go all in on a 1 game battle. So let's go in from a point of view, and maybe it is again Friday night. Maybe it's for the Heat. It's we're going to go Unsworth, Sorpole, Gherkin, or something like that for our 1, 2, 3 combo, just to see what works for us. I think the Heat still need to figure out who's their best closer. I think they need to figure. I think that's the biggest, from a pen perspective. I think that's their biggest question mark at the moment, is who's the guy. They know they've got the riches of starters. Who's going to be their closer? But this series is delicious. And then the other thing that begs the question, though, DV, we talk about. I mean, the Heat as well probably get a really good advantage in some ways into the postseason, because their last, let's just say their last 12 games before going into the postseason are all at home, and they're against the 2 best teams in the league as well. So you've got, Melbourne have gone up. I mean, Melbourne last night, I mean, that's ridiculous, 22-2. I mean, that's a ridiculous scoreline that is probably not doing anything for anyone outside of, congratulations, Darryl George, 10 RBIs on the game. I mean, that's having yourself a day. That's having yourself a real day. But
that's having a day.
But is it the tune-up that you'd want? 5 or 6 games out from postseason? Probably not. But it is what it is. So I think Melbourne would come to Perth going, this is such a great opportunity for us to to defend our Claxton Shield, defend the cup, and I love what this. And I think this series probably is not so much about wins and losses because again, Melbourne probably just need to win one game to secure that top spot. I don't. It's not about wins and losses this series. I think again, talking to the people around, I think as long as you're in the top three, again, it doesn't probably matter so much in this postseason, because of the tournament style, the sort of College World Series style
Yes.
that it's going to be. But I think it's these two teams as well as Adelaide. They probably spend the weekend going right. We've got to worry about this week, but we probably the urgency to get the wins aren't as important because we know we're probably going to qualify for the postseason. So, what do we need to do? How do we need to structure our team? What's the best starter? Who's the best long reliever? Who's the best closer? And then from an offensive point of view, what do we do? What do we do to get early runs? What do we do to get late runs? What do we do when we're in a funk? How do we shake ourselves out of the funk? What does our small ball game look like? And that to me is so interesting because you got two teams who also probably not going to give too much away to each other because presumably they'll probably play each other in the postseason. So it does shape though, DV. It shapes as, in my opinion, the most exciting round of the season. We were looking forward to it so much when it was Perth heading to Melbourne. Then of course, they got one game in, and then that whole thing shut down. But it was interesting. But Melbourne come here, and then presumably Melbourne hosts the championship series from.
What we're
no one's
understanding.
officially told me
Right.
that, but
we believe
piecing that together.
Yeah, Phil says, and you see that on the screen there, but where I had it up a moment ago. Blue Sox hold on; they'll be 3-6, winning percentage of 333, which puts Brisbane 286. But see, okay, Phil, that's true, but can you really can that really be a gauge? Again, you can't. You got to. How do I say this without stepping on everybody's toes? You can't punish folks for not playing games, and you can't punish folks for playing games. Yeah, technically that's correct, but I've seen Brisbane play on the broadcast, and I've also seen Sydney. I think Brisbane's far enough along, and they played more games despite the winning percentage. I just think that merits a better look in the postseason. That's nothing against Sydney, and I'm going to get all kinds of Sydney anti-love. That's not the case at all. It's not Sydney's fault, but I just think I just think, unfortunately, and like we said earlier, Sydney is going to be the one that's going to be the club that's going to suffer the most from all this because of COVID, all the things that have derailed them, and it's unfortunate. Now, maybe if there's any justice, baseball gods lowercase, that means that Sydney moves on with percentage points. I mean, that's fine. But then if you're Brisbane, who's traveled across to the hubs and hosted a hub, what's their reward? I mean, it gets a little dicey. So I hope it doesn't come down to percentage points.
And
I hope not.
And I think there's going to be a conversation at some point. And you could probably take. I think you could take Melbourne out of this. You could take Melbourne, Perth, and Adelaide out of this equation. So now I'm just talking about Sydney, Canberra, and Brisbane. At some point, there's probably going to be a conversation around, for Brisbane right now. They just played Melbourne 8 times in a row. Sydney have played Canberra 8 times in a row. Now, there's a big gap in the talent between Canberra and Melbourne. We know that. So, and this is sort of, I think, to add to your conversation, DV, about winning percentage and getting punished and whatnot. I mean, Brisbane's last, 20 games, or not 20, 15, 16, 17 games have been against Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide. I mean, they're all teams who are, in my opinion, better than Brisbane. But
yes.
Sydney have got, and vice versa. Canberra have had, Sydney, and granted, Canberra have had Melbourne a couple of times in the mix as well. But I'm sure at some point, if it cuts the way that Sydney make it through on percentage, I'm sure the questions will be asked around, albeit they've got Adelaide this week, who are a great team. Nobody's really played anyone. I mean, if the worst case happens and Adelaide gets swept by Sydney, I can't work out the percentages on the fly, but if Adelaide gets swept by Sydney, Or
Yeah.
Perth gets swept by Perth somehow gets swept by Melbourne, and somehow I don't know, maybe they get the 5 seed or something like that. Like I'm sure there'll start being questions like, okay, yes, it's a COVID year, but do the percentages mean as much when you're playing higher ranked teams? I don't know. So I think
Yeah.
there'll be.
Yeah, it's you can't help who you play, and that's always the old adage. You got to play what's in the schedule, and I get that. I just hope it doesn't come down to that. I really hope this thing works out where the league doesn't have to explain that. And again, I feel it's like I said before. I love all these teams. I feel for all the owners, all the license holders. What a year to go to the bank and say, oh well, this is a deposit because we didn't play. I mean, it sucks. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's not good for business. Why? My thinking here, but from a competition wise,
yeah,
it's unfortunate. The way that postseason play works, by the way, it's the College World Series style. And I will say this: we talked about this that the Heat and really the Heat, Adelaide, Brisbane, all those teams in the hub, they were not built for double headers and for two doubleheaders in back-to-back days. They were built for 4-game series. That's
yeah.
basically what this playoff format is. It's a 4-game winner take all. The Heat are built for that. Melbourne's built for that. Adelaide's built for that. And in the Heat's case, their bullpen is there with all that depth. And I think while we're getting into the semantics about roles and that kind of thing, the bullpen, that depth could be a key because you're not going to have, you're playing no tomorrow. You got to, basically 2 cracks to do it. If you lose 2, you're done. You win 4, you win it all. And that's the way you're going to be doing. That's where this club was built. That's how these clubs are built. They're not built for hub style. They're built for this playoff format. And I just throw that out there for all these clubs. That's what makes it so exciting there here on Baseball's Best Bet. Quick checking the scoreboard quickly before we let you guys go. I had it up a moment ago. And Phil, is it over yet?
No, it's 3-1 top 7 in Canberra. So the Cavs got a bit of work to do because it's doubleheader. Then later today, the Aces take on the Bandits. But yes, 3-1 Sydney lead. I assume that game is heading. I'll tell you exactly where that game is. 2 out, 2 outs, top. Yep. Sorry, 2 outs, bottom 7. So the Cavs down 7. To their final out.
Yeah, 2 outs, bottom 7. We'll be back on our normal schedule next week. Again, this was kind of a, I think it's great what we do.
Fry-up edition.
Fry-up edition. I want to give one opinion, but I don't want to put Paul on the spot because he's the man calling the games. I will just say this, and I'm not going to go into semantics of it. I was disappointed as a fan myself, not able to watch any games yesterday from the West. Putting the game notes together was a challenge. I did those. They're already up to date for next week. I was disappointed. That's all I'm going to say. There's a lot of reasons behind it, and I'm not going to ask Paul about it. I don't want him to go into it because I don't want to put him in that place. But I'm going to go ahead and jump off on the ledge here and just say this. I was disappointed there was no coverage in either radio or video. None. And I was disappointed. In a year where opportunity is needed, that was a blown opportunity. That's all I'm going to say. I don't have any. I'm not going to make any guess, but it was just unfortunate that, and it was unfortunate that the game I had to basically follow back through the old Twitter feed, which that's not what Twitter's for. But anyway, I say that. Blue Sox 1 out of way. Phil says, partner, are you a little? It's weird too. As we close this thing out, we're usually in the postseason mode. As a matter of fact, this time last year, you and I were in Canberra for a wild card game.
Yep.
It's a little odd going a little longer this year, but I guess it's what happens in a COVID year.
It is. But look, I think this is why it's so interesting as well, because, now there's this nice cross section of the ABL heating up and Major League Baseball heating up as well. But I think I'm going to be interested to watch how that sort of final series is executed. Like, as I said, I'd be shocked if it wasn't being held in Melbourne. I think while no one officially, I don't think anyone officially knows that. I just read the tea leaves and say it. This is an interesting point for me, Ethan. I think one of the things that has probably helped a lot of the teams is I believe most of the teams have had some form of government support as well. So, if the government chooses to shut a border or whatnot, it's, I think they come to the party a little on some costs lost or revenues lost. I think Perth would be doing okay. I don't think they're making money, but I think of all the teams, I think they're probably going okay because the crowds have been good. Again, tick over 2,000 last night. Good bar sales, good few things. But yeah, I think I do think just on Ethan's point, and one of the things wrapping up, I guess, as the ABL, what are we? We're probably only 2 or 3 shows away, DV, from wrapping up for the ABL season. And I think in the off season, I think there'll be transactions with ownership. I think there'll be transactions with licenses. I think there'll be obviously changes at the head office with the new CEO coming in as well. But I do think this season will linger on for a little while. I think there's probably 4 rock solid clubs, and I think there's probably 1 or 2 emerging clubs, and I think there's probably 1 or 2 licenses that might change owners, change hands. But that will be the interesting part of the off season / MLB / American Association on season, DV.
That's right. I will add too, Ethan, as I told you guys, and gosh, 8 weeks ago, whenever this whole mess started to really becoming a roadblock, my biggest concern was the financial viability of these ball clubs this season. As I told you then, even the best drawing team in the American Association last season lost 7 figures. That was a concern. I've served as a GM of a minor league ball club. It's been years, it's been a while, been 20 years, but I was there. I can tell you as one who's filled out the deposit slip for after a Friday night ball game and how nice it is to go to the bank and deposit a certain amount. I also know how it feels like after a rain out on a Friday night and you go to the bank on Saturday morning and that deposit slip is very thin, very thin. I've also know how it feels when you've got leftover beer kegs and merch and things of that nature. You've ordered hot dogs that you don't sell. I know all this. It's heartbreaking. That's why when my front office mates in Kansas City, when we get a rain out, I hurt for them because there's a lot of financial strain there. That's in a normal season, a normal rain out, a normal season. Ratchet it up a bit where you have a COVID situation where games are being canceled, whole series are being canceled, not just one game, whole series are being canceled. So my heart breaks for them. And I know how hard it is for these folks to make money. There's no way in the world, in a perfect year, the margin of error for making a buck is very thin. So throw all this in there, it's been an uphill battle. So I hurt for these folks. I pull for them, pray for them, whatever you want to say. But it's an uphill battle. I agree with you, mate. There'll be some shuffling of the deck chairs or the card table, whatever. There has to be because there's been a lot of. I mean, takes no brain. No, doesn't take my brain to tell you that some folks have had a hard go of it. I mean, it's been hard in everywhere. And I hope that's going to be hopefully a reset. And I've talked about this, a reset at the off season to really get this thing going, and assuming everything's going forward in the right way. But yeah, that's what I say. Why did Cam Velo decide to step down? We're going to ask him that. He's going to be on our show in a couple of weeks, kind of an exit interview. Paul, do you have any more insight than what I'm about to add?
No, I don't. I don't know. I haven't had a conversation with Cam since he stepped down, so I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I mean, I think, but in the same breath, I think this is, I think one of the really important things to highlight is because it does seem this year. I will say this though, it does seem this year, and this may be a COVID thing, and maybe it's the product of being locked down, product of being whatever. There does seem to be a lot more anger online in baseball than there possibly has been in many years. I know other broadcasts, I know our broadcasts. There are a lot of keyboard warriors in going on this season. But one thing I'll say that about Cam Vela, which is he leaves the sport much better than he found it. I mean, he leaves the league much better than he found it. And they've got that expansion into Geelong Korea. They've got that. Like this year would have been a great year had it not been COVID. Would have been great for everyone. But I just think that it has been interesting from the booth this year, DV. It has been interesting to sort of see, and in the ABL fans comments and whatnot. I saw a comment today where fan had an opinion on the Brisbane's 22-2 defeat, and like a lot of people jumped in for it. There just seems to be a lot more people highly critical about what's going on, from front offices to team management to team ownerships to players to whatever. But yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that thought, DV. Other than that, I think we may just have to sort of, as we sort of wind this season down. It hasn't been perfect. It's been wheels off a fair bit. It's been really crazy and different things, and there's been a lot going wrong, but there's been a lot going right at the same time. And it's just, and the most interesting fact I think about broadcasting baseball this year is the amount of fans that we get in from the US who send through a message to YouTube, just like not comprehending how there's baseball going on in stadiums with no masks and things like that. And that's just the hope for me that carries over in American Association season as well, DV, that there can be fans back in the stands, there can be people, crowds there, they can, and maybe we can leave all this mess behind. And this time next year, when we're talking baseball, sure, we're going to be critical on plays and strategies and different things, because that's what happens in sports. But maybe we can just be a bit kinder to each other, I think, DB.
Amen.
That's all I'll leave you with.
Amen. And that's what I always say when I close this thing out. I'm right there with you. But I'll let you go and enjoy your Sunday. How about that? Because
Sunday fun. And I want to just mention before, these Cap America hats.
Yeah, those caps are great, by the way.
This is the Ray. Go this way. This is the one that, if I can find the camera, which I've got there on the side. There you go. So these are that Tampa Bay Rays showcase they did in Perth. So so the kids that did this a couple of weeks ago, they all got their WA hat, and this is the Tampa Bay Rays did this showcase in Perth, which I think is going to be the future of talent development in WA and throughout Australia as well. I'd love to see the Phillies do something with Adelaide. It was great here, but and I just wanted to give a shout out to our good friends at Cap America, because there is a baseball's best mate cap coming, Dan Vaughan. There is a Cap America one-off limited edition baseball's best mate cap coming. It's going to have our logo there, our logo there, and it's going to have baseball's best mate on it. We'll love you all to grab one at some point. But
that's awesome.
Stay tuned, awesome. DV.
It's a good look. It's a good look, mate. It's a very, very good look. Well, I appreciate you, and we'll be back same time. Well, not same time. We will hopefully be back on a Friday morning, and we will be ready for we'll be talking Aces and Heat. You know what? And my closing thought to you, isn't that the way it should be? Aces and Heat. When I think of great series, at least from a Heat perspective, they often involve late season series with Melbourne, whether it be getting to postseason, whether it be for a Claxton Shield. I think it's kind of the way it should be, mate.
Absolutely. All is right in a very wrong world at the moment, DV.
All right. Well, we'll definitely Ethan will definitely TBA merchandise coming. We have one sale. A lot of great things coming to you, folks. The TBA is going to be alive and well. We are our little engine that could is going to keep on rolling. Mate, let you go, and I will see you. Much love to you, brother.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
There he is, Paul Morgan, right there. Close this thing out, and again, let me pull that down. Close this thing out. Baseball's best, mate. Thank you to my broadcast partner, Paul Morgan. Paul said it. I say it every time. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. Let's be better fans. Again, I love the Heat, but I also want to see everybody else do well in this crazy ass year where a lot of stuff's gone wild. I'm in North America fighting COVID with my family. We all came down with it. I'm much better than my wife and my youngest. And I'm very thankful for that, but I'm also still praying and pulling for them and need them to get through. So I appreciate your prayers and support of that. But my point is, in this crazy year where a lot of stuff we can kind of kick the tires on and be upset about, what we got to keep doing is going forward and being better fans of our league, better fans of our game, and try to do our best. And I hopefully, even when we're critical here, and I was critical about the broadcast earlier, I thought it was a missed opportunity. Doesn't mean I don't love that group and don't want to support them. I want to see this club and this league do well. So if I can help them with suggestions and that's the thing. We're going to offer suggestions. We're also going to bust our ass to do a good job to help grow this thing. We've been doing that. So let's all continue to bust our ass and show more love and more sympathy and more support. Let's just be better fans, be better people, and let's just keep fighting on. Our game's going to really grow with everybody showing love and empathy for each other. So best to you. Hope your team wins today. I know a few folks in Sydney, you're very much alive. Very big stuff. Later on today, Canberra and Sydney will go at it again. And, of course, Brisbane and the Aces will do battle as well on a Sunday in the eastern part of the country. Perth and Adelaide are both off today. But, again, that final mystery round has been solved. And we'll get to that next Friday on our show here at Talking Baseball Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate. Big thank you to everybody that stopped by. Thank you. Much love to y'all. And we'll see you guys next week from our broadcast partner, Paul Morgan. I'm Dan Vaughn saying, Talking Baseball Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate. We're here for you. And we'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Have a great Sunday fun day. Little Breckian baseball for you.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
That's actually the open. So let me do this. Let me the latitude to close it properly because we do an open to close, and we're going to do that. So let me get the open and close properly here. Vaughn, what are you doing? I actually, you're going to love this. I'm pull the curtain back here, but I actually pulled the close and open. I got them kind of mixed up, and I have them labeled, and I labeled them. So here is our close right here. Let's run the close properly. How about that? Let's try it again. So again, I love the close, but I'm hearing that I'm going, wait, that's not it. That's the open. Let's try it again. Let's go ahead and close this thing out again. Thanks for joining us and being here, part of our little Sunday fun day show right here on Talking Baseball Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate. Thanks for everybody that joined us here as we try one more time to shut this thing down. Have a great rest of your Sunday. If you're North America, great rest of your Saturday. Thanks for all the kind words and prayers as well. Let's try it again until next week. It's Talking Baseball Australia Live saying, see you at the ballpark, everybody. Here we go. Let's roll it in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. There you go.
Some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its roots.